know.
Bro.
Let me think. That was a good talk. A good exchange. Yeah, back and forth. I was gonna say something, but I forgot. Yeah, that's cool.
Could say art is a subset of creativity.
Yeah,
I can definitely agree to that.
yeah. It's just the thing is though. You know, I've studied it's a fancy word, umwelten of different animals, and from a semiotic angle too. What makes humans unique, and I've said that before, is symbolic reference. Other animals are creative, but they don't have the, like make a flag. I mean, the U.S. flag or the flag of any country, you don't see anything like flags or like uh, other symbols among other species emerging. I mean, a flag represent something that's more and above than what we just see. A flag is like a country, or it's like the history, the legacy. You see what I mean? Of that, the flag, and you know, uh, they have iconic and lexical reference, but not symbolic reference yet. But maybe they have proto symbolic reference. I actually was talking about that before, but I don't want to derail this conversation about. The reason why I was mentioning that is because the art seems to be exclusively human. Like Shakespeare, or like Paradise Lost was very important to Christian history too. I think so, and that's a piece of art. Paradise
Right.
Lost. Yeah. Yeah.
So was Dante's Inferno.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Yes. Dante's Inferno.
For the
a
same
better example.
reasons.
Yes. Art seems to be uniquely human in that sense. You know what I mean?
Did Neurojack leave?
Yeah.
Is he a Christian?
Cut out.
Yeah, he is.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, he is one. There's a few Christians that join. Neurojack, Unseen Warfare. I'm sure there are others as well. But yeah. We do have Christians around. We got people who are into all types of religious outlooks. Buddhism, Hinduism, Gnosticism, Islam. We've had tons of people on panel. We've had a number of Jews on panel to discuss their worldview as well. So yeah, it's gone to a bunch of different places. So I appreciate all the correspondence.
I also want. Sorry, I don't want to derail this too much.
But go ahead.
Nobs made a good point. We can consider different, unwelten or different perceptions from other beings, but we can never embody it. Like we know birds can see ultraviolet light. We cannot see that light, but we know they can see it. But we don't know what it's actually like to experience it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same with fish who can sense electrical fields or something. It's crazy to me. There are sensory experiences beyond our capacity, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah, we know that. Though.
Is it beyond our capacity, or is it beyond our current perception? And I'm not saying like the ability to fly, but I'm saying different perceptions of different things. Like empathy is a big one, or empathic.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe, I don't know, psychedelics can break the the sense of our tunnel and expand the tunnel temporarily or something, or make.
I would say psychedelics, if anything, would be the key to moving forward with any of this, like breakthrough per se. And I would say that the evidence of that is the monkeys that have been eating psychedelics that have started using simple, basic tools.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I won't die on that hill. I'll put it that way. I'll definitely say that. But it is definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's just illegal where I live. But if it weren't illegal, I would have already done a lot of psychedelics. Yeah.
Where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
I live in Georgia, USA.
Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia.
Well, not too far, and you can go have some fun. Go have a conversation with your ego. And I don't know if it's really whether it's having a conversation with your ego or establishing the parameters of the ego, or a combination of both.
Yeah, I think it's Arizona or New Mexico. I think they're like legal over there. But yeah, I'll play some music for you guys, and then we'll move on to more of these little points. We may just stick with Glenn McGee. We may move on to the economic and philosophical manuscripts. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the show. We have an hour left here, and this is quite a longish music break that I put together here. These are the songs that I chose to like put like some vocals on for tomorrow's show. So I'll show them for you guys. And yeah, they're pretty interesting. But yeah, blessings. So yeah, cool out, enjoy the tunes, and yeah, we'll be right back in, like 8 minutes or something like that. But yeah, blessings.
Welcome to sounds return pure and easy. Non andare via, non andare via. Non andare via. And
All right. Yeah, let's move on with the text here. Blessings. I'll drop the link again if anybody wants to come through. For sure. But yeah, it's talking about this initial stage of purification, which has to do with correcting the intellectual standpoints and the reception of a true doctrine. And of course, there's a realization that the universe is an internally related whole pervaded by cosmic energies, right? So all of this knowledge is part of attaining perfection, right? And all this type of stuff, right? So let's go to the next series of things. It says, to make clear the parallels between these doctrines and Hegel, here is a preview of what I will be arguing in the rest of the book. Right now, he provides examples from Hegel's writing. Right, he says Hegel holds that God's being involves creation, quote unquote, the subject matter of his philosophy of nature. Nature is a moment in God's being. Okay. So nature being a moment in God's being, and this whole idea of of the world spirit, right? Okay, and also of God's entrance into history, right? The whole historical framework, right? That history is pushing towards a final goal, right? This is sort of what the notion of progress was based on to begin with, right? They didn't just come out and say, well, everything's gonna get better and better all the time, right? Anybody would have considered that stupid, right? They would have said, no, there's an idea that perfection exists, right? And it's beyond the material realm, right? And the material realm has to be merged with this immaterial sense of perfection, right? That's actually where the idea came from, right? Okay, so Hegel basically planted the seed for this notion, right? Okay, now what's next? It says Hegel holds that God is in the same sense, quote unquote, completed, right? Or actualized through the intellectual activity of mankind, right? Quote unquote, philosophy is the final stage of actualization of the absolute spirit, right? Okay, so it's not only that God created the world in order to know himself, right? God created man in order to restore God's own purpose, right? Of attaining perfection, right? By creating perfection in the world via man attaining his own true purpose, right? So all of these things are related to God realizing his own nature, right? Or so on and so forth, right? Or God attaining knowledge of himself, right? As man knowing his capacity to become God, right? Right? So does God attain perfection through man's knowing, just as he attains a sort of completion by nature, which is something he created in order to know himself. He requires man as much as he does creation, and man is the prime aspect of his creation in general, right? This is why this whole notion had to do with the sort of humanism, right, as well, right? You know, in the formative stages, right? So it says Hegel holds the circular quote unquote conception of God and of the cosmos I referred to earlier, involving God quote unquote returning to himself and truly becoming God through man, right? So this whole notion of God returning to himself, right? This has to do with the notion of time I mentioned earlier, right? That this cyclical notion, circular notion, represents an eternity, right? And sometimes this is represented by the Ouroboros, right? So let's move to 3. It says Hegel's philosophy is encyclopedic. He aims to end philosophy, right? And also the notion of end of history, right? Progress seeks the end of history.
Or you can smuggle in the Sabbatean Frankism in there.
Right. Exactly. And he's going to go on and tell us that, what the Kabbalistic and the Joachimite notions, they're pretty much embedded within Hegel's philosophy, right? And this end of philosophy, for all intents purposes, by capturing the whole of reality in a complete circular speech, right? Which Hegel says that he completed this task, right? We read this many times, right? He said he attained gnosis, right? Hegel believes Hegel believes that we rise above nature and become masters of our own destiny through profound gnosis provided by his system. Right, he did say that, right? Hegel's logic is an attempt to know the aspects or moments of God as a system. Okay, so this is what Vogelin meant when he said that Hegel's phenomenology is a magical performance, right? As we read in the Faustian Face of Modern Science, right? Okay, here, hold on. No. Oh yeah, shit. Okay, so it says in a famous passage of The Science of Logic, Hegel states that logic is to be understood as a system of pure reason, as the realm of pure thought. This realm is truth, as it is without veil, and in its own absolute nature. It can therefore be said that this content is the exposition of God, as he is in his eternal essence before the creation of nature and a finite spirit. Okay, let me read this quote again. It says, Hegel states that the logic, quote, is to be understood as a system of pure reason, as the realm of pure thought. The realm is truth as it is without veil and in its own absolute nature. It can therefore be said that the content is the exposition of God as he is, in his eternal essence, before the creation of nature and a finite spirit.
It seems like deifying Plato's forms or something.
Yeah. He's saying God is an eternal essence before the creation of nature, and that the content of his own philosophy is the exposition of God. So this is exactly what Glenn McGee said, that the Hermetics said that the goal of their attainment, okay, was to resemble, right? Was this sort of complete speech, teleos logos, right? Hegel, as we've read many times, he claimed to have attained it, right? He claimed to have attained the goal of the Hermeticists, right? Through philosophy, which he said, right? Okay, Hegel's phenomenology, says McGee, of spirit represents in the Hegelian system an initial stage of purification in which the would-be philosophers purged of false intellectual standpoints so that he may receive the true doctrine of absolute knowing, logic, nature, and spirit, right, which is sort of his own trinity, right? Okay, and finally, Hegel's account of nature rejects the philosophy of mechanism. He upholds the followers of Bradley would later call the doctrine of internal relations, quote unquote, as against the typical modern mechanistic understanding of things in terms of, quote unquote, external relations. And that is sort of a key part of phenomenology in general, right? In terms of its philosophical approach, right? It focuses on, it purely focuses on internal relations. Okay, now he has a little section on Hegel's metaphysical view, right? Which I'll read maybe the first paragraph of this, right, as an introduction, but we'll move this discussion of Hegel and the Hermetic tradition mainly to the Wednesday and Saturday show. To the Wednesday and Saturday shows, right? Right. So we could free up some space on the Tuesday show to talk about other subjects, right? But yeah, let me move to this. It says, given the evidence, right, for Hegel's place in the Hermetic tradition, it seems surprising so few Hegel scholars acknowledge it. The topic is so dismissed as an unimportant or more uninteresting, right? Usually it is treated as relevant only to Hegel's youth, which is false. Surely one reason for this attitude is disciplinary specialization. Few scholars of the history of philosophy ever study Hermetic thinkers. Another reason, says McGee, is the recent tendency among influential Hegel scholars to argue that it is wrong-headed to treat Hegel as having any serious interest in metaphysics or theology at all, let alone the sort of exotic metaphysics and theology that we find in Hermeticism. This is the so-called non-metaphysical reading of Hegel. As Cyril O'Regan has pointed out, it goes hand in hand with the anti-theological reading. For instance, David Kolb writes, quote, I want most of all to preclude the idea that Hegel provides a cosmology including the discovery of a wondrous new superentity, a cosmic self or a world soul or a supermind. Wow, that guy missed the boat. It seems like Hegel is a huge proponent of this notion of the universal mind or the cosmic mind. right? That we've seen in like Plato and Pythagoras and all these different thinkers, right? Yeah, yeah, and it's funny. Glenn McGee says, "But this is exactly what Hegel does." Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Right, the phrase non-metaphysical thing. I'm sorry, excuse me. The phrase non-metaphysical reading, quote unquote, seems to have originated by Klaus Hartmann, who in his influential 1972 article, quote, Hegel, a non-metaphysical view, identified Hegel's system as a hermeneutic of categories. Okay, anyways. More on this later. Okay, I'll bring it back around, right? Let's go to Marx for a little while, right? And take a look at what sort of slop Marx is putting down here. You mean? As a continuation of our general reading here. And I'll try to find a good section here. Right, but the key idea that Marx is focusing on from Hegel is this notion of alienation, right? And in that notion, he's talking about man as a social being, right? And how this universal mode has sort of abstracted man from nature and caused sort of the commodification of man. Right, and he furthermore extrapolates that the relationship between man and nature is sort of a relationship between man and women. Right, let me pull up this actual thing here from Giorgiani, because Giorgiani's funny as he sort of explains this. He says exactly what I want him to say. I mean, let's just put it that way. He says exactly what I want him to say. Don't change, Giorgiani. You're perfect. You're fucking perfect, man. Because you are just perfectly, just devilish. He admits everything. Right? So check this out. And this will explain why we're interested in this particular text, right?
And it's also worth noting, I have to say, that, and it's interesting how few people have observed this. The crescent and the star were symbols of Prometheus.
Mm.
And if you look at the flag of the Soviet Union,
Yes.
and it's on a red background, which suggests fire as well.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting, because the star there is the planet Venus, which was referred to in the guise of the morning star as Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, be that as it may, when you look at this essay, Prisoners of Property and Propriety, you see that my concept of the spectral revolution and my identification of the archetype of Prometheus as the archetype of humans striving for self-determination through the power of science and technology are ideas that were developed in dialogue with Marx, and also with through Derrida's reading of Marx, which emphasizes this idea of the spectral in Marx's thought.
Well, Marx used the spectral in a political way, talking about the specter of communism.
But the point is, it's not fundamentally political. It's only derivatively political. Marx is, the majority of his writing is on economics and politics.
Right.
But Marx, at his deepest level, is an ontological thinker. And his ontology has to do with the issue of human alienation.
Yes.
And this brings him very close to Heidegger. So it wasn't all that difficult for postmodern thinkers like Foucault and Derrida, or even, say, Herbert Marcuse in his attempt to develop what he called Heidegger Marxismus
Yeah.
to synthesize Heidegger and Marx, because they're grappling with some of the same problems of human existence.
Well, as a parapsychologist, it strikes me that our alienation from nature, the way in which women are oppressed in our society, the way in which many workers are alienated from their own work, although I think less so perhaps today than in Marx's age, all is suggestive to me of a climate in which we're alienated from the depths of our own psyche.
That's right. And it even becomes a question of what our own psyche is.
Mhm.
In the title of that essay, Prisoners of Property and Propriety, it's propriety also in the French sense, propriété, or what is propre, what is proper to oneself.
Yeah.
In other words, to be a property holder in the modern Enlightenment conception, of the natural rights of man, including the right to private property,
Mhm.
you first have to have a concept of what is proper to yourself.
Yeah.
Right, of what define the limits of your selfhood, your subjectivity as compared to another person.
Mhm.
And so the upshot of that essay is actually a deconstruction of the persona through an analysis of the way that memory and thought function robotically to reinforce certain social expectations and to construct our personality for us in an unconscious way that's actually ultimately oppressive.
And so many people, when you ask them, as parapsychologists sometimes do, have you had psychic experiences? We have a situation where the higher people are up on institutional hierarchies, the less likely they are to acknowledge psychic experiences that are common.
That Marx is really concerned with the alienation of humanity from nature,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that he sees the natural world, the physical world, as in a way a projection of the human unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And he discusses the manner in which the relationship between man and woman in the property holding system of the modern industrial period epitomizes the dysfunctional alienation of man from nature.
And I've always
Okay. So these would be the key points that we're looking at, right? Is this idea of alienation from nature, right? And obviously there's three configurements that Marx is talking about, right? And that's man, nature, and society, right? So society is sort of the synthesizing of man's alienation with nature, right? And what sort of stops this alienation from becoming more palpable, right? And what are the things that become appropriated, right, as aspects of human life, right? He says overcoming of all alienation and return of man from religion, family, and the state. Right? So these three things, religion, family, and the state, represent or embody, right, the man's alienation from nature that must be reconciled by society. Right? And here he goes.
I know you can keep your point there. That's why I want to interrupt. Earlier, you were reading a comment from someone who said you can. It was a Hegel. It was probably Hegel. You could become beyond nature's laws. It was a recent phrase you just read. It kind of contradicts that part. Was that Hegel?
Yeah, that was Hegel. Yeah.
All right. So, do you remember the quote?
Yeah.
It's like beyond nature's. To become beyond nature, and I wanted to come on here originally and be like, what does that mean? Because I almost thought you were saying it, but now I realize you were representing Hegel's ideas.
Yeah, it says oh shit. Did I lose it? Yeah, I must have lost it.
It was like, well, anybody can go back. It was within the last 15 minutes, I would think, something like that. So this guy, and then the claim this guy's making again.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, Hegel believes that we rise above nature and become masters of our own destiny through the profound gnosis provided by the system, and he's comparing that to point 4, that man can perfect himself through gnosis. He becomes empowered through possession of complete speech. So yeah. But yeah, in Marx, it's interesting, right? Because this threefold thing that's trapping man's unconscious, right? Within this alienation, right, is embodied within religion, family, and the state. Now he says, on the assumption, and this is the last part I'll read, and then I'll move to Sowell and Paul Stuthern, and then I think Truther has something to say about the panel people or whatever he's been writing in the chat. So we'll go over these guys, and then I'll conclude my show and stuff. But it says here, on the assumption that private property has been positively overcome, we have seen how man produces man, himself, and other men. How the object, the immediate activity of his individuality, is at the same time his own existence for other men. Okay, so man is defined by him existing through others and for others, is what he's saying, right? So far. Then he says their existence and their existence for him, right? So now he says, similarly, however, both the material of the material of labor, right, and man as subject, right? Okay, so man as subject and the material of labor are equally the result and beginning of the movement, and the historical necessity of private property lies precisely in the fact that they must be this beginning. Right? So what is the beginning of private property in the idea of Marx? Right? It's the notion, because we have to exist through others and for others. Right? So we invented, so we said, okay, well, you get something for that, and that's you get a little bit of property, right?
Now,
Okay,
so I was saying this earlier, and maybe you can tie it in better than I can, because with these thinkers, I can't really think of the connection, but I'm sure you can. We are the living soil. We are the earth. Like everybody's like, oh, are you native? Are you this? Are you that? Like you're a colonizer and this and that. We are each the living soil composed of the soil, the plants that we eat. That's what we are made of. Our bodies are not our spirit. That's a different conversation. But I'm curious, like, that is the beginning of rights and freedoms and principles. Like, you are the living land. You are a natural inhabitant wherever you are. And you have rights.
See, he's getting away from that idea, because he's saying, look, nature is turned into stuff, and man is turning man into stuff by alienating himself from nature. And the only thing that can solve this dilemma is human society, right? So this is proposition, right? So he says this is the social character, the general character of the whole movement. As society itself produces man as man, so it is produced by him. Activity and satisfaction, both in their content and mode of existence, are social. Social activity and social satisfaction, the human essence of nature, primarily exists only for social man, because only here is nature a link with man, as his existence for others and their existence for him. As the life element of human activity, only here is nature the foundation of man's own human existence. Only here has natural existence of man become the human existence, and nature becomes human. Thus, society, and here's the key point, and then I'll move to Stuthern. It says, thus society is the completed essential unity of man with nature, the true resurrection of nature, the fulfilled naturalism of man and humanism of nature. So check that out. Naturalism of man and humanism of nature. Right? So yeah. So anyways,
So this is again. So give me the Cliff Note summary of this guy's thought in the question context again one more time.
it's this whole idea of Hegel's dialectic, right? So in Hegel's dialectic, right, mind is the antithesis of nature and man is the synthesis, right? So in a similar idea, right, man is alienated from nature, right? Because of this whole idea, as I mentioned, right, those three modes, right, where private property is sort of embodied, right, through religion and family and the state, right? So it's in an abstraction of these forms and a combination of man, a resynthesis of man with nature is embodied by human society itself, right? So to reiterate the points, right, he's saying that human society is the natural solution, right, for this process of alienation that has gone on, right? So he's kind of saying like the state, like he's even saying that private property is a necessary product of this process of like man resynthesizing himself with nature through human society, right? So he's saying capitalism is a natural step towards communism. In other words, right, to take a bird's eye view of what he's attempting to
You think that has something to do with how we are like? There's like communist rhetoric about how you will own nothing and be happy and renting
Right.
economy. You think that kind of ties into it? And stuff,
Oh
or
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is what he means by this idea of universal prostitution and then the community of women. Right. He's saying like there should be a social communism, right, that's not based on family or religion or the state, where you own people because you have a job and you worked on things, right? But no, society or socialism or socializing is sort of the solution, right?
Around the time Marx came out, I remember reading Bjorkney saying something. He said that around that time, the Jays were like, they have a kind of special messianic mission to disclose their teachings and like publicize it to the Gentiles. Bjorkney said that before. I can try to find it again for you. And Marx was a part of that, and he was always kind of like a Trojan horse to kind of create a kind of, I don't know, state of emergency or endless war between Russia and America. And like that's why you see powerful billionaire Jays surrounding Putin, and you see America also have lots of Jays. And that communism was created with the intent to the end goal of capitalism and communism are really the same. Commie blocks and transhumanist stuff. You get what I'm trying to say. Maybe there's a big conspiracy there. I'm sorry about that. I went off on a tangent, but I can try to find what Bjorkney had to say about that if you want later. I have to go look again and stuff. He had something interesting to say about Mark, about how he was. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see that.
Who have kept alive and developed the ideas that were to become chemistry. A similar process may well have been at work in 19th century philosophy, with its vast metaphysical systems keeping alive and developing humanity's most ambitious intellectual project, a total systematic explanation of the world. The intellectual alchemy necessary for such a project continued to develop while modern science was in its infancy and incapable of such ambitions. But eventually plausibility prevailed. And now, instead of the dialectical method metamorphosing base arguments into gold, we have come to place our faith in the rickety and explosive apparatus of science. Hegelianism's hubris was its claim to scientific rigor. As we have seen, the dialectical method was neither logical nor scientific, but even worse was Hegelianism's belief in an absolute based on the structure of science. The notion that this absolute was the only ultimate reality led to a dangerous downgrading of the real world and those who inhabit it. The individual became something that didn't really exist, but was only part of a process that transcended him. The plagues of the 20th century were political, and belief in this suicidal notion was to be their bacillus. From Hegel's writings. All the rational is real, and all the real is rational. The Philosophy of Right. Preface. It is possible to show that the notion of philosophy is implicit even in our everyday thinking. We begin with our immediate perceptions and desires, but these soon urge us beyond their immediacy towards the apprehension of something greater than ourselves, an infinite being and infinite will. This is the course I have pursued in The Phenomenology of Mind. The Encyclopedia of the Philosophical Sciences in Outline. 3. Time, like space, is a pure form of sensuous perception or intuition. It is the condition of all immediate, active perception, as well as that which is perceived, i.e., of all experience, and all which is experienced. Nature is made of space and time, and is a process. When we stress its spatial aspect, we are aware of its objective nature. When we stress its temporal...
Well, see, so nature becoming a process, and also time being the vehicle of perception, right? It's basically like nature is sort of reduced to temporal, right? So he's sort of putting time above nature, which sort of reduces things like, definitions, individuals, states, right, to the process of history, right, and towards becoming, right, where this is why the individual, the state, all these things sort of lose their definition, right? As Stuther was pointing out.
aspect, we become aware of its subjective nature. As we perceive it, nature is an unending and continuous process of becoming. Things arrive and depart within time. Such things are not only within time, but they are also temporal. Time is a way of existing. The Encyclopedia of the Philosophical Sciences in Outline, 201. Every true or real logical thought has three aspects. Firstly, the abstract or comprehensible aspect, which indicates what a thing is. Secondly, its dialectical negation, which says what it is not. Thirdly, the speculative, which is concrete comprehension. A is at the same time that which it is not.
Yeah.
These three aspects do not constitute the three aspects of logic. Rather,
have you heard of Haskala? The Haskala.
No. Yeah. You're talking about the Jewish Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Like the Haskalah, right? Right. Moses Mendelssohn and all these people, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That happened. And Marx is a part of that too. I believe.
Yeah, I talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about that on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it conforms to some of their prophetic outlines also, like the time around that occurred. And so,
yeah.
Like, if you look into their prophecies and their old stuff, it may connect to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's highly relevant. Like Moses Hess and Moses Mendelssohn and Moses Mordecai Marx. The three Moseses.
yeah, that's all I was trying to say. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's highly relevant information. Yeah, the Jewish Haskalah, right? Haskala. It's the Jewish European Enlightenment, right? And it parallels the ideas that I was talking about with the Alexandrian Jews, right? Just as Alexandrian, notions spread and Jews became, one of the foremost proponents of the philosophy, right? Becoming like, very advanced in, thoughts like Middle Platonism, right? They became, big proponents of Enlightenment philosophy within Europe, right? A lot of the reasons they became proponents of it is because they fought for religious toleration, right? So there's a lot of reasons why Enlightenment philosophy was championed by the Jews, and there's many thinkers throughout Europe at the time who were, huge proponents. Like Moses Mendelssohn was writing letters to like Kant, right, to Immanuel Kant, right? He had a correspondence with him, right? So many of those Jewish philosophers and thinkers, they attained a lot of, like notable prestige, right? And I've mentioned several of those thinkers, right?
They are moments of everything which has logical reality and truth. They are part of every philosophical concept. Every concept is rational, is an abstraction opposed by another, and is comprehended by a unity with its opposite. This is the definition of the dialectic. The Encyclopedia of the Philosophical Sciences in Outline 13. All science, apart from philosophy, deals with objects which are taken for granted. The items under investigation are merely accepted prior to their scientific investigation. Likewise, interpretations gathered in this way are verified by referring back to the given material. Sciences have no need to justify the status of their material. Mathematics, jurisprudence, medicine, zoology, botany, and so forth naturally presuppose the existence of magnitude, space, number, right, sickness, animals, plants, etc. With philosophy, it is different. Philosophy begins in doubt and argument. It opens with a question about itself. The object and method of philosophy are not assumed or agreed before we start philosophizing. Investigating these things is what philosophy is about. This is what is so problematic about the subject. On the one hand, philosophy must begin by investigating itself, and on the other it must mediate with the world. This necessary uniting of the immediate and the mediate is what philosophy is. The Encyclopedia of the Philosophical Sciences in Outline, 1, 2, 3. Experience and history teach us this, that nations and governments have never learned a thing from history, or acted in accordance with anything they might have learned from it. Lectures on the Philosophy of World History, Introduction. So to be independent of public opinion is the first formal condition of achieving anything great or rational, either in life or science. Such achievement will assuredly be recognized in time by public opinion, which will duly transform it into one of its own prejudices. The Philosophy of Right, 318.
So think of how Discordian that idea is, right? You just have to think of something new, and history will just incorporate it, right? The whole idea is to raise yourself above public opinion, right? And create the antithesis of the public opinion, right? They will then create it as their adversary, right? And then absorb it within their own synthesis, right? So this is almost like the system's neatest trick. Like you create the system's opposition and the system perfects that opposition, learns how to incorporate it within the system, and then you're absorbed within the system itself, right? I mean, it's just, it's literally a monstrosity.
As a form of universal family, civil society has the right and duty to supervise and influence education, for education molds a child's ability to become a member of society. In this instance, society's right is of far more importance than the arbitrary and contingent wishes of the parents, especially where this education is to be completed not by the parents but by others. The Philosophy of Right, 239. We Germans would be Hegelians even if Hegel had never existed, insofar as, unlike the Mediterraneans, we instinctively attribute a deeper meaning and greater value to becoming and development rather than to what is. We scarcely believe in the justification of the concept of being. Nietzsche, Gay Science, Aphorism 357. How will your free, if not anarchic nature accept the Spanish torture of the method within which I confine spirit? Letter 167 to von Sinclair, draft, mid-October 1810. Insofar as philosophy may claim to be of independent interest, indeed even of the highest interest, its teacher must openly admit to everyone that nowhere can it be of much value except to a few. Letter 152 to Van Kert, Nuremberg, December 16, 1809. Only within the confines of the state does man have a rational existence. The aim of all education is to make sure that the individual ceases to remain purely subjective and attains an objective existence within the state. He owes his entire existence to the state. Whatever worth and spiritual reality he has are only as a result of the state.
Right, like
Sheesh.
passages that would make Crito blush. Honestly, crazy. Like basically like taking this notion of the state, and I think Stuthern does good to hammer on this point, right? Because yeah, Hegel, he's the fault, or the fault line in history, right? That really influenced people like the postmodernists that say like you're pretty much just defined by society, right? The state defines a person,
Yeah,
right? The system defines a man, right?
there's a satanic dimension to Hegel. It's very creepy. And so I think it's very satanic.
Right.
Yeah.
Lectures on the Philosophy of World History remain purely subjective and at Nuremberg, December 16th, 1809. Only within the confines of the state does man have a rational existence. The aim of all education is to make sure that the individual ceases to remain purely subjective and attains an objective existence within the state. He owes his entire existence to the state. Whatever worth and spiritual reality he has are only as a result of the state. Lectures on the Philosophy of World History. Introduction. In history, we are concerned with what has been and what is. In philosophy, on the other hand, we are concerned not with what belongs exclusively to the past or even the future, but with what is, both now and eternally. That is, with reason. Lectures on the Philosophy of World History. Introduction. The ethical order of society reached its goal and truth in the spirit that passed away within it, that is, the individual. However, this legal entity, a person, has its substance and fulfillment apart from the ethical order. The process of world culture and belief disposes of such an abstraction as a mere person, and by the completion of this process of estrangement, by attaining the extremity of abstraction, the self of spirit finds the substance become first the universal will, and finally its own possession.
So did you hear that? Yeah, society transforms the individual into a universal will. Right? So the state has not only disposed of the individual, but it's also transformed its purpose into a universal end. Right? So see that this sort of explains, the exact formulations that I've been pointing to, right?
At this point, knowledge at last appears to have become entirely adequate to the truth which is its goal, for its truth is this knowledge itself. Every opposition between the two sides has been eliminated, yet not for us, who are merely outlining the process, not merely implicitly, but actually for self-consciousness itself. Thus, self-consciousness has mastered the opposition which consciousness itself involves. This opposition is the conflict between certainty of self and the object. But now the object for it is the certainty of self, which is knowledge. Just as the certainty of itself as such no longer has ends of its own, is no longer conditioned and determinate, but is pure knowledge. The phenomenology of...
Okay. So see, the object, right, which is knowledge, right, it's not distinct from the self. Right? So man must merge with the object of his own, attainment, essentially. You're right. Like, so the knowledge that man, that is the object of man is man. Right?
of mind, spirit. 6. The universal...
Yeah, so I just said that to say the point that of this notion of externalization, right? The externalization is part of the process of completion, right? Becoming complete, right? So the subject-object distinction is this process beginning, right? Is a realization that there's something external to you that you must merge with, essentially, that you're going to become, right? So
determinate, but is pure knowledge. The phenomenology of mind, spirit. 6. The universal mind manifests itself in art as intuition and imagery. In religion, it manifests itself as feeling and representative thinking, and in philosophy, it occurs as pure freedom of thought. In world history, the universal mind manifests itself as the actuality of mind in its entirety of internationality and externality. World history.
So look at that. Art, religion, politics, they're all expressions and realizations of the universal mind, right? If we go back to the statement, right, that those, people were making, that try to empty Hegel of the metaphysical standpoint, what a bunch of dunderheads, right? He literally says again and again and again, he talks about the universal mind, right?
Is a court of judgment, because in its absolute universality, the particular, that is, the forms of worship, society, and national minds in all the different actualities, is present only as ideal, and the movement of mind here is the manifestation of this. World history is not the verdict of might, that is, of a blind destiny fulfilling itself in abstract and non-rational inevitability. On the contrary, because mind is implicitly and actually reason, and reason is explicit to itself in mind as knowledge, world history is the necessary development, out of the freedom of mind, of the moments of reason, and thus of the self-consciousness and freedom of mind. The history of mind is its own.
Okay, so think about that, right? The externalization or expression of mind is reason, right, which is realizing itself through world history, right? And the freedom of mind is the realization, of reason through this process, right? So let's check that out again, right?
Of this. World history is not the verdict of might, that is, of a blind destiny fulfilling itself in abstract and non-rational inevitability. On the contrary, because mind is implicitly and actually reason, and reason is explicit to itself in mind as knowledge, world history is the necessary development, out of the freedom of mind, of the moments of reason, and thus of the self-consciousness and freedom of mind. The history of mind is its own action. Mind is only what it does, and its action makes itself the object of its own consciousness. Through history, its action gains consciousness of itself as mind. It apprehends itself in its interpretation of itself to itself. This apprehension is its being and its principle, and the
So you guys see how difficult Hegel is. It sounds like nonsense sometimes, right? Doesn't it? But yeah, the return of the self to the self. It's like, all right. It's like some perfectly circular sentences there.
fulfillment of this apprehension at one stage is simultaneously the rejection of that stage and its elevation to a higher stage.
Right? At once the rejection and the elevation to a higher stage. And the synthesizing of itself with what it is not, right? Essentially is what it entails, right?
The philosophy of right. World history. There are pages of Hegel which have the same effect in the realm of thought as the sonnets of Mallarmé have in the realm of poetry. They are vehicles of evocation and of vague sentimental nuances, nothing more. This does not belittle their value, it may even increase it. Yet verbal narcotics and hypnotic formulations should not be imposed on us as truths. Giovanni Papini, 24 Minds. When the Jesuits and Catholic missionaries first set out to teach the Indians European culture and manners, they went among the tribes and laid down daily routines for them as if they were schoolchildren, and no matter how idle the natives were, they duly obeyed. The missionaries also built storehouses and showed the Indians how to use them so that they could provide for their future needs. The missionaries chose the best methods of civilizing their charges, treating them much as if they were children. I even recall that one missionary used to ring a bell at midnight to remind them to perform their marital duties, because otherwise it would never have occurred to them to do so. These rules initially had the highly beneficial effect of arousing their needs, these being the origin of all human activity. Lectures on the Philosophy of World History.
What the fuck? What in the world?
Introduction.
My
Appendix
Slovenian
1.
friend, he knows Hegel very, very deeply. You know, he's a transhumanist too. Maybe he can come here and talk or
Yeah,
debate.
you
one
should send him that quote.
Yeah.
You're ringing the bell, telling the people to fuck. Weird, dude.
day.
Like, what the hell? Like, what was he onto with that one? You know, that sounds like pure nonsense. That sounds like Alice in Wonderland type of stuff.
Chronology of Hegel's life. 1770. Born August 27th in Stuttgart. 1781. Has severe bout of fever which also strikes his entire family, resulting in the death of his mother. 1788. Studies theology at Tübingen University, where he meets Hölderlin and Schelling. 1793. After graduating from Tübingen, moves to Bern in Switzerland to take up post as private tutor. 1796. Hölderlin secures him a tutoring post in Frankfurt. 1799. Death of Hegel's father leaves him with a small private income. 1801. With the aid of Schelling, appointed as Privatdozent, junior lecturer at Jena University. 1806. Hegel finishes The Phenomenology of Mind as Napoleon wins Battle of Jena. 1807. Becomes editor of the Bamberger Zeitung. 1808. Becomes headmaster of gymnasium in Nuremberg. 1811. Marries Marie von Tucher. 1812. Publishes first part of The Science of Logic, completed 4 years later. 1817. Publishes The Encyclopedia of the Philosophical Sciences in outline. 1818. Becomes professor of philosophy at University of Berlin. 1821. Publishes The Philosophy of Right. 1830. Deeply upset by riots in Berlin. Appointed rector of the University of Berlin. 1831. Dies of cholera in Berlin on November 14th. Chronology of Hegel's era. 1770. Birth of Hölderlin, Beethoven, and Wordsworth. 1776. American colonies achieve independence from Great Britain. Birth of the United States of America. 1786. Death of Frederick the Great. 1789. French Revolution. 1793. French Revolution develops into the Terror under Robespierre. 1806. Napoleon wins Battle of Jena. 1813. Birth of Wagner. 1813. Napoleon defeated at Battle of Waterloo and consequently exiled to St. Helena. British consolidate empire over whole of India. 1819. Simon Bolivar launches his campaign to rid South America of Spanish colonial rule. 1821. Faraday discovers principle of the electric motor. 1825. Birth of the railway, Stockton to Darlington route opened by Stephenson. 1829. British annex whole of Australian subcontinent. 1830. Greece achieves independence from Ottoman Empire. 1831. Darwin sets sail on HMS Beagle for Galapagos Islands. 1832. Death of Goethe in Weimar. Chronology of significant philosophical dates. 6th century BC. The beginning of Western philosophy with Thales of Miletus. End of 6th century BC. Death of Pythagoras. 399 BC. Socrates sentenced to death in Athens. Circa 387 BC. Plato founds the Academy in Athens, the first university. 335 BC. Aristotle founds the Lyceum in Athens, a rival school to the Academy. 324 AD. Emperor Constantine moves capital of Roman Empire to Byzantium. 400 AD. St. Augustine writes his Confessions, philosophy absorbed into Christian theology. 410 AD. Sack of Rome by Visigoths heralds opening of Dark Ages. 529 AD. Closure of Academy in Athens by Emperor Justinian marks end of Hellenic thought. Mid-13th century. Thomas Aquinas writes his Commentaries on Aristotle, era of scholasticism. 1453. Fall of Byzantium to Turks, end of Byzantine Empire. 1492. Columbus reaches America. Renaissance in Florence and revival of interest in Greek learning. 1543. Copernicus publishes On the Revolution of the Celestial Orbs, proving mathematically that the Earth revolves around the Sun. 1633. Galileo forced by Church to recant heliocentric theory of the universe. 1641. Descartes publishes his Meditations, the start of modern philosophy.
While still a youthful revolutionary in Germany, before his later fame as a liberal, he said, "Let us have decent and sincere polemics. Let us give the world an example of learned and far-sighted tolerance. But simply because we are at the head of the movement, let us not make ourselves the leader of a new intolerance. Let us not pose as the apostle of a new religion, even though this religion be the religion of logic, the religion of reason." Karl Schurz, while still a youthful revolutionary in Germany, before his later fame as a liberal in the United States, met Marx and formed an opinion of him that accords with the impressions of many others. "I have never seen a man whose bearing was so provoking and intolerable. To no opinion which differed from his, he accorded the honor of even a condescending consideration. Everyone who contradicted him, he treated with abject contempt. Every argument that he did not like, he answered either with biting scorn at the unfathomable ignorance that had prompted it, or with opprobrious aspersions upon the motives of him who had advanced it." Marx liked to glare at anyone who challenged his conclusions and say, "I will annihilate you." The radicals and revolutionaries whom Marx successively alienated over a period of 40 years reads like a who's who of the 19th century political left. Even the patient and long-suffering Engels came close to a break with Marx, whose curt and clumsy remarks on the death of Engels' common-law wife in 1863 wounded his friend. Engels wrote, "All my friends, including Philistine acquaintances, have shown me more sympathy and friendship on this occasion, which inevitably affected me quite closely, than I had a right to expect. You found the moment suitable for a demonstration of the superiority of your cool manner of thinking. So be it." Marx's apology brought forgiveness, and the historic partnership continued. The younger Marx of the 1840s presented a more humane vision in his writings, and has become something of a refuge for modern radicals disillusioned with the more blatantly severe later Marx, who seemed to presage Lenin and Stalin. Light-hearted humor also brightened some of these earlier writings in a way seldom seen again in the later works of Marx and Engels. Yet it would be a mistake to ignore the authoritarian and terroristic elements that were as present in these earlier writings as in the later ones, and in Engels as well as Marx. Engels' first draft for the Communist Manifesto included compulsory labor, a deliberate undermining of the family by ending the dependence of the wife upon the husband and of the children upon the parents, and the erection of common dwellings for communities of citizens to replace family homes. Marx's Neurheinische Zeitung declared on its last day of publication, "When our turn comes, we shall..."
Yeah, and this idea of the destruction of the family and the destruction of religion is sort of pervasive throughout the the writings of Marx and Engels. Right? We read a huge example in the economic and philosophical manuscripts. Again, as he's mentioning, those are in his earlier writings, right, which are seen as sort of softball stuff. Right? His later, more revolutionary writings are seen as sort of the harder stuff. Right? But even then, in his sort of lighter, more Hegelian, more ontological, writings, there's still this element, as so well points out, right? So this is true. This is a true fact. We've observed this, right?
"shall not disguise our terrorism." A current vogue, aptly characterized as Engels baiting, makes it especially important to assess Engels' role in Marxism. Engels was much more than Marx's friend and benefactor. He was one of the very few people with whom Marx had intellectual interchange, and by far the most important. For most of his life, Marx, as an obscure autodidact, was utterly cut off from participation in the world of universities, learned journals, scholarly conferences, and other institutionalized intellectual exchange. Nor did he have any intellectual interaction, by correspondence or in person, with the leading minds of his time, Mill, Darwin, Tolstoy, Menger, or Dostoevsky, for example. Marx's relationship with contemporary radical intellectuals was one of tutelage or hostility. His correspondence consisted overwhelmingly of gossip, intrigue, and passing remarks on current events and contemporary personalities. Only with Engels were serious intellectual matters discussed with even occasional regularity. Engels' early economic writing provided the basic conception that Marx systematized and elaborated in the massive volumes of Capital. Finally, Engels' piecing together and editing of the many manuscripts for the posthumous volumes of Marx's magnum opus was a monumental work of dedication and self-sacrifice, stretching over more than a decade. Engels was not only a far clearer writer than Marx, but often more subtly and accurately conveyed Marx's theories, especially of history, for he did not so readily indulge in Marx's penchant for epigrams at the expense of accuracy. Engels' letters on the Marxian theory of history are a major contribution to understanding what Marx actually did in his historical writings, as distinguished from how Marx tried to encapsulate his practice in cliches that continue to obscure more than they reveal. There is no way to know what Engels would have accomplished in the decades he devoted, first to earning a living for both himself and Marx, and then to completing Marx's unfinished work. But what he actually accomplished was both impressive and indicative. His Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, remains the best summary of the system of thought that bears the name of Marx. How much of Marxism originated in fact with Engels is a question that may never be answered. Engels was clearly a precursor of Marxian crisis theory in economics, as Marx himself indicated. Engels' letters to Marx also presage the content and title of Marx's 18th Brumaire, but the collaborative writings of Marx and Engels and their unrecorded conversations over a period of 40 years preclude any definitive disentangling of their respective contributions to Marxism. In 1883, at the graveside of Marx, Engels painted an idealized picture that provided the stuff of which legends are made. He began, "On the 14th day of March, at 2:45 in the afternoon, the greatest living thinker ceased to think." According to Engels, Marx discovered the law of development of human history, and also the special law of motion governing the present-day capitalist mode of production. Innumerable slanders Marx brushed aside as though it were cobweb, and, though he may have had many opponents, he had hardly one personal enemy. This was at best a highly sanitized picture of a man who personalized every quarrel and whose letters to Engels were full of spiteful gossip and petty intrigues. Finally, Engels' funeral oration ended with these words: "His name will endure through the ages, and so also will his work." Marx's name has indeed become infinitely better known than when he died in relative obscurity in London 100 years ago. How much of what has happened in the 20th century is his work, and in what sense, is a much larger and more complex question. For Marx the man, he perhaps wrote his own best epitaph when he said, "Nothing that is human is foreign to me." Others made him an abstraction and an icon.
All right. Well, we'll continue reading economic and philosophical manuscripts, pieces of that. We'll continue reading the rest of this, text I have of Hegel and the Hermetic tradition, right? But we'll focus on that on the Wednesday and Saturday shows instead of on the Tuesday shows. The Tuesday shows now will be for reading looking at biographical information about Rousseau and reading some of his thoughts and reflections, right? And also looking at the ideas of the Frankfurt School, right? So we're going to try to focus on some of those ideas as well, right? So yeah, blessings to all the people. Buddha, do you have anything to say to these people before we get out of here?
Yeah, yeah. I don't really like Hegel. He's very hard to understand, Hegel. If you actually try to read him, my friend, he knows a lot about Hegel, and he's a transhumanist and a Hegelian. You know, what I mean, that's pretty crazy. But
Right. They kind of go hand in hand.
yeah, they do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's all I have to say. Yeah, I hope you all have a good night. Blessings. You have a good night too, Tim. I'll see you later.
Yeah, blessings, homie. Yeah. Thank you for being here with me. All right. Yeah, let me reset this thing. Give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Yeah, I'm trying to like. I don't know if you guys could hear me earlier or whatever. My shit froze out, and yeah, let me put this one in the back here, or yeah, I didn't know I had this as a background on my own thing, and right, because I have this as a background on the. Yeah, see, so yeah, so I got confused for a second because that's also a background we have back there. So yeah, blessings to all the people. So yeah, so that's all the show we had. As I said, thank you for joining us here on the Machine Lies, where we talk about the lies of the machine on the machine that lies. And I hope you guys have clarity to see through the lies. And yeah, we'll bring it back tomorrow. We got a lot of different ideas tomorrow, including this whole notion of Hermeticism. We're gonna go through some texts from the 2nd century, right? We've been doing that. We're also gonna be looking at some of the pre-Socratics, right? So we're gonna go from the pre-Socratics to the texts of the 2nd century, right? Okay, we're gonna move into some thoughts about Maimonides, right? His pre-Kabbalistic thoughts, right? We're moving into the Rosicrucians and some of their links with the Kabbalah, right? And Jewish mysticism, right? So we got a number of philosophical intrigues there, right? Then we're gonna bring back this whole text, right? Hegel and the Hermetic tradition, right? Economic and philosophical manuscripts, and that'll move us into looking at Mumford and Ellul, who are sort of reacting to the thoughts of Hegel and Marx, right? And all these different ideas, right? Because Hegel and Marx, they sort of supported technocracy, futurism, so on and so forth, right? So yeah, so we got a lot of different things, right? We did a very interesting review of transhumanism earlier on Neurojack stream, right? We've been doing a lot of different things, right? Covering a lot of different ideas, right? But yeah, tomorrow we got a regular show. Saturday we got a regular show, right? Yeah, so come check us out, right? Yeah. And let me play some music for you guys. Blessings. I appreciate you guys. Right, it's been a great time, right? So yeah, I greatly appreciate the correspondence, right? Yeah.
dozen. Knew who you was, so you dropped on the cousin and you blamed it on me. He's another to the man, he's a الرشا يا نسيم الورد خبر لي الرشا لم يزدني الورد إلا عطشا top summer, a tough loving for that decayed mascot that settled in a worm lunch, lovely and vile. Half never even got comfy in a style. 15 past van ran around our country, looking the heavy duffels that are hungry and proud. Young, dumb, loud, and repping the locale. Duffels that are hungry and proud. Young, dumb, loud, and repping the locale of whatever foul four-track nurture the child, and it works for a while. When a stone cold surf get a megaphone and perch in a crowd. Wow, first things first, the alert, the allowed. Free every worker immersed in denial. Circle the now till his face turned purple and never ever once turned worship and bow. Walk the fence like a deer in headlights through a fisheye lens. Hopped out the Ford for more folklore till his cape got caught in the door one morning. Please don't tap the phone and go no lights on, but the cat is home. Cat a comb, Kid Cudi with his calicos to try to coax big money out the rabbit hole. And it's a diary of savage folk with no future. No teacher taught him how to maneuver. No rules, so he offered a blueprint with no regrets and blamed self for the bloopers. Cooped up, keeping the quills dipped and busy with a little killer feeling no tolerance for the tipsy. Whether it's six or city, I'm opening up. You sick of running on empty, come and soak in the smut. Dregs with a blacksmith coffin and a box of cassettes. Hey, you, ready on the right. I was air with the missiles, I was earth with the mics. I was hopped up heading for the last set of lights with a sweaty upper lip on a midsummer's night. Come on! No. Come on! No. Come on!
Off we go, gonna find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Off we go, gonna find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll.
Often walking, stopping not to caution myself. It's like green light, go slow at the yellow light. Seems like I know my dwelling's my home. A little too well and it's time to excel and hit the road. Already made that move and yo, I missed that trail. And all my friends that stay true, I can count on one fingernail. And since I felt it properly, assertively say what I meant by this whole concept. Red light, I've been fed, tried by those who can't feed their own. I've been swept aside by those who can't clean their room. I've been kept alive by those who can't keep their bones sturdy enough to exercise, get a life and leave their doom. Soon I'll be there, I'm prepared to leave you, so get your state of mind ready for place and time you need to go. To each his own, but once we there together, you'll know the beauty of sharing endeavors.
Off we go, gonna find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Off we go, gonna find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Which way is the sun? Cause that's where I'ma run. Stacking pages, making water till the ocean's outdone. No mountains too high, I close up the sky. Now I only follow fire if it's footprints in the drum. Stars are just shapes, a microcosm in space. The universe is just a molecule that consciousness shapes. See, time doesn't race, I'm closing the case. Emotions are safe, no motions are waste. We walk and we swim without looking at maps. Directions, gaining control of the load on my back. See, travel is deep and as wide as you sleep. I broke the so-called genetics and connected the tracks. And I left behind the lesser mind. Stretched the vines and sketched a sign that petrified the next design until the lecture died. Electrified body and soul. Now mine finally knows no matter where I'm at, I'm always here ready to
about
go.
And oxygen, meeting lots of friends, being openly confused in how you keep it locked within. It's the clock ticking, the demise of the hourglass, holding on to every grain, trying to make the power last. It took a brush with death to make you honor every breath. It's an abused child that killed his father while he slept. You see, I ponder every step and wonder why I wander. Somber and I wept until I met the songbird. See, he led me on a journey into another climate. Searched the world for happiness, returned home to find it. I went upon a journey, yearning for alignment. Searched the world for happiness, returned home to find it. I went on a journey, yearning for alignment. Searched the world for happiness, returned home to find it. I went on a journey, yearning for alignment. Searched the world for happiness, returned home to find it.
Off we go, to find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Off we go, to find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Off we go, to find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Off we go, to find that pot of gold. Let's borrow a car, follow the stars, rock and roll. Follow the stars, follow the stars, follow the stars, follow the stars, follow the stars.
Relax and place your hands unclasped.
This was located to all of my closest peeps. Programming beats, putting it down live in the streets. Sound so sweet, down in a Jeep. Sound surrounded complete, under the ground with no fun to compete. This one's located to those who need new ambition. On the movie transition, transform into a true musician. What do you envision? What do you need and what's missing? If you hear the voice and do you listen? Listen very close and put your ear up to the speaker. Wisdom is enclosed within the breath of every creature. Let's breathe in the reefer, the rescue is in reliever. Smoke is because it's greener, you gotta light it, me neither. Remember when I met this ballerina? She gave me her number, but since then I haven't seen her. Simmer if I had a dreamer, but I don't, I'm in a slow rolling Volvo solar arena.
Close your eyes.
You went platinum on your first album, but tell me this, why is it now I heard you only sold about 200,000? Now what's that telling you? That your fans was never down, got you wondering now. Maybe I should've stayed underground, but you can't come back, cause real rap fans, they hate you. You overdid your image, now you can't stay true. All glittery and shiny, looking empty on the camera with nothing to say. Dancing with the mic like who? Y'all cats them fell off. And we in this for the long term. 20 years from now, the Cali age is still burning next to whoever's out there to rep through. Planet Asia, Rascal, Cali agents. Ghetto respect, never forget where you came from. Never forget where you got your name from or the game from. The laws of nature won't bless you. You'll be forever unprotected. Rascal, Planet Asia, yeah. Ghetto respect, never forget where you came from. Never forget where you got your name from or the game from. The laws of nature won't bless you. You'll be forever unprotected. Rascal, planet Asia, yeah. Ghetto respect. Yo, praise the king, the real thing. I'll be ready to bring the quick swing like I'm still 16. 28 out of the gate. I tried to reach y'all but couldn't relate. We in a whole nother state. Mind traveling. While you niggas still babbling the illest MCs, you cats really ain't challenging. We on the mic, better get it in flight. You know exactly how it's done, we be keeping it tight. Yo, you keep it real, I be cutting the deals. I bring it right up to your chest, give you something to feel. Still, they wanna test, still dissing the West. The first thing that I learned, never listen to press, because only as good as your last LP. The next time out, your ass couldn't sell 3. Now it's for free, the price came down quick. I flip it around and make the shit sound sick. Remember where you came from, don't act dumb when a nigga asks. If you do it for the cash, let it be known I know half of y'all fake. The other half y'all take the whole damn cake. Never forget where you came from. Never forget where you got your name from or the game from. The laws of nature won't bless you. You'll be forever unprotected. Rascal, planet Asia, yeah. Get a respect. Never forget where you came from. Never forget where you got your name from or the game from. The laws of nature won't bless you. You'll be forever unprotected. Rascal, planet Asia, yeah. Get a respected. Now who the fuck said the West can't rock? It's Cali agents in the house, y'all niggas best just jock. For all y'all fake ass industry niggas that ride dicks of certain cliques, get a load of this brand new shit. Yeah, hot off the press, never settle for less. We fit half-ass niggas for a person to dress the best. We double team now, living the dream, and now you looking at some shit that ain't never been seen before. Full-grown kings connect to get dope, but yo, the cash and the ass ain't the only thing we spit for. It's on again, it's back to MCing again. Now I can walk through my own hood with a G in my pants. Cuffed up tight, better start living it right. We here to take this whole thing to ridiculous heights. We might give it to some that can give it some run, but you can never ever forget exactly where you came from. Never forget where you came from. Never forget where you got your name from or the game from. The laws of nature won't bless you. You'll be forever unprotected. Rascal, planet Asia, yeah. Give it respect.
In the tradition of the inner city griots we take you through a journey, through a story, to a place and a time in a small town. But as you listen, you're to pay no never mind to the small town and the time and the place. A place where the moon and the sun does as it pleases. A place where everybody knows everybody else's business. A place that basically could be anywhere. Listen.
Check it out. And the sun took a day off and the moon stood still. The only light was in sight with the one just past that old onion field. If you look from where I'm standing, you see that old scarecrow. They say if you look too long, you might jump off that wooden bowl. But between you and me, I think that's just a bunch of, hey, you know, some even believe he responsible for the death of old man Dan. They found him without his thinking cap with straw in his hand. And the strangest thing about it is that they never found his head. They never found his head. They never found his head. God damn it, they never found old man Dan's head.
And they'll never find, cause I took it. It didn't go like that at all. See, I just hated that his eye was crooked and I wanted his eyeball. And things got out of hand and old man Dan had to die because of that eye. I can tell you, them scarecrow stories are lies. But I did hear when the moon was full and the sun's about to rise. You can walk by and think about that head at the crack of dawn, you'll cry.
And the sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the moon got a frown cause he can see it all from the
and top. The sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the sun be clouding.
And the sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the stars come to work all drunk.
And the sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the moon got a frown cause he can see it all. In a small town of 1,500 haunted houses on every corner lived the oldest lady in the world, Alona. Miss Desmona Lorraine Cortez from Barcelona, Spain says she came to reclaim her family's name and put her soul to rest. Yes, on sacred ground. Her family owned this town and the people in it too. But I was just passing through. She said people around here believe in voodoo, witchcraft taboo. It was kinda hard for me to take this all for true. But she did say when a stranger comes down, this is what they do. First they'll stone you, and when you come to, then they'll own you. There's no one to run to when the sun takes a day off and the moon stands
still. Well, this is what I heard. The sun blew a fuse and the moon had stood in moon. Now morning came with rain and went from wetness down to evening, sang the birds. The lamp of sun begun to fade throughout the noon. A piano plays a tune in which a woman's voice softly croons adamantly. She yells uncharacteristically, dance with me, you fool. But not only was I introduced, but apparently being seduced. But by who? For namesake, let's just call her a mysterious lady maroon. That's from San Diego, Cancun. With the things in my ear that make the flesh of a grown man's hand move. Suspensefully hypnotic, neither erotic nor exotic, but psychotic in a sense. For instance, she made reference to actually raising the dead. In a sentence she once said with dread. And the sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the moon be locked in his room doing shrooms.
The sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the moon be in a hot air balloon to the moon.
And the sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the moon just be faded, crying.
The sun took a day off and the moon stood still.
Around my part of town, the moon got a frown cause he sit off from the top. And sometimes he'll stop, look out with a stargaze. Sometimes he'll cover his face and he won't be seen for days. The sun had took a day off and the moon stood still. The sun had took a day off and the moon stood still. For real.